Welcome back to another episode of the Distil-Nation NZ podcast. My name is Tom. I am the owner and distiller here at Hare Creek, and I'm joined today, and as always, because now this has become a thing,
It's become a thing.
by Cameron. Cameron, why don't you introduce yourself?
I'm Cameron, and I run Discovering Drams, whiskey tastings, events, and reviews.
Yep.
And today's subject, we're not focusing on a distillery as such. We're looking at all of the work that is being done by New Zealand distilleries to try and be more sustainable.
Yeah, I mean it is a industry that it's industrial. That's the thing, it's an industrial piece of work, isn't it? Like distilling is industry, right? So industry is notorious for waste and all sorts of pollution and whatnot, right? So and distilling's no different. We've got our fair share of how we can negatively affect the world. But there are distilleries in New Zealand, going about it different ways to try and lessen that impact, right?
Yeah, and if you look at, as you say, any industry, consumers sustainability is one of a number of factors that consumers are looking at to decide, okay, well, what am I going to buy? Where am I going to spend my money? There is a lot that's being done, and there are lots of distilleries that are doing lots of different things and cool things, but it's an effort to, this is certainly by no means an exhaustive list of all of the things that all of the distilleries are doing. Yeah. But we thought it was worth a look to see, okay, what are Kiwi distilleries trying or doing in an effort to try and be a bit more green. Yeah,
and we've chatted with quite a few distillers now, and a couple of them for sure have had some very obvious sustainability practices. The first was the Littleton Distilling.
Yes.
He was using all that bad wine that he had been given that was just, going to go to waste, probably down a drain somewhere. He's turning that into gin. And I know he's not the only one doing that.
No. And even Vaughan most recently had the brewery approach him and say, I've got this beer, it's gone bad, can't shift it, I'm going to dump it otherwise.
Yeah. I've done that once too. Bad beer is always a good one, really.
Your beer ski?
Yeah, beer ski.
That was an interesting one.
Yeah, it was an interesting one for sure.
But then, of course, we can't mention Vaughan without talking about his commitment to reducing food waste.
Yeah, Vaughan as well at Good Bones Distilling, and the girls down at Dunedin Craft Distillers. They're doing a similar thing, taking all that wasted bread and cake and whatever they can get their hands on, sort of thing, and turning that into spirits. Which
that's not something. I mean, I know you've done bad beer. You're not looking to helping others reduce their food waste.
Actually, after our chat with Vaughan, if you look behind you I did do a test in the jar on the table back there, and it looks gross. But I talked to somebody at the local farmers market, one of the bakeries, and I said, "Oh, do you have any food waste ever?" I was just it was in my head, and I was thinking about it. And they said, "Here, take this, do a test," and it fermented out really nice, actually. They were like chocolate brownies or something like that had gone stale. I just broke them up, put them in with some enzymes and yeast, and let it do its thing, and it turned into alcohol.
Okay.
But it's cool that you can do that. I'm not going to take that on any further than that, because there are people doing great things with it.
And I also think there are a couple of challenges. One that Vaughan alluded to is that it can gum up the works, quite literally. Yeah. But also, all well and good for him to be making a vodka, because, vodka isn't so picky about what kind of ingredients that you use. But if you wanted to make anything other than vodka, you would probably run into some problems with categorization and what exactly you call the spirit you're making.
Yes, yeah. That would be a tough one, because he did mention too, he was looking at something sort of like a whiskey, but he's not sure exactly how to go about it. Yes, it's made from grains, but it's made from something that's already been made from grains. So does that count?
Yeah, I don't think the DSA is ready to deal with that problem.
Yeah.
What else? Okay, so ingredients, we're talking cake and food waste.
Yep.
But what other kinds of ingredients are people using in an effort to be sustainable?
Well, one of the biggest ones in the gin industry
Yep.
is, of course, when you make a gin, you have to get a neutral spirit base. Most people will buy this in. It's sort of like, if you're a painter, you don't expect the painter to create the canvas. They don't need to. They go and buy the canvas and then they draw on it. It's the same for gin. They will go out and buy that neutral spirit so they can create the gin from that. Here in New Zealand, we don't actually have any real producers of neutral spirit, other than Fonterra has a subsidiary called Lactanol, and they make neutral spirit from whey, so from dairy industry, and it's just something that is a absolute waste product that they don't really need, and they have turned it into a process that they can ferment the whey into alcohol, and then they have a really powerful column still that distills it to 96 point whatever percent, and they have a couple different grades of it and whatnot, extra neutral, just neutral, and it's quite unique to New Zealand. That, though, I think I don't know of too many other places that are making whey alcohol on a commercial, industrial scale. Maybe
I think just taking a quick backward step, when you go to make cheese,
Yeah.
and you are heating up your dairy products, you've got that milk and you've added the bacteria, and then you get the solid curds that are then made into cheese, and then, as you say, it's the liquid that's been separated as part of that process, and that's what's normally dumped, and they're taking that and then turning that into an alcohol. Yeah, I know that there are a few distilleries, and not just gin, some vodkas as well, that are using that. It doesn't, having talked with some people, it doesn't always have the best reputation because it's seen as maybe a cheap way of doing things. But so maybe that's a bit more of the international reputation. But I would say that, as you've just said, that there are different grades of the whey alcohol, and I think that there are, just because you are using whey alcohol that you're buying in bulk, does not mean that your finished project is necessarily, cheap or whatever.
Yeah, definitely not.
No.
Like, if I can compare it back to the artists, it's your quality of canvas, I suppose, right? But after you've painted on your canvas, how much of the canvas do you really see at the end of it? It's a bit that way. It's obviously there and blah blah blah, but yeah, I think it's interesting that we have that as an option. It's a very New Zealand thing. New Zealand's got such a big dairy industry,
Yes.
that it's really cool that we can do that, because it is the only option for New Zealand-made neutral spirit in bulk.
Right.
There is no grain producer. There is no sugar producer of large quantity of neutral spirit.
Yeah, we've covered the sugar before.
Yeah.
But all of that grain, well, if we growing grain in bulk, that can go off to beer, bread. There's a whole bunch of things. And as you say, that would otherwise be arable land that's being used to grow this crop just for spirits. If we've already got, for better or worse, a big dairy industry that is producing all of this byproduct that would otherwise be dumped, well, I guess, again, if you're giving something a second chance at life, that's better than nothing.
Well, yeah, and I think it's a bit of distilling itself is sort of the result of using what you have on hand, isn't it?
Right.
So, like, if we didn't have globalization as we did today, it might be all we had, and that's what you make it out of, is what's local to you, what is the wastage around you, If you were making grappa, it was because they were about to throw those grape skins away after the pressing process, but they had alcohol in them, we're going to distill that, and it was the same with, we had a bad year of crop, but we can't eat it, well, we'll ferment it and distill it. Or, we couldn't sell the crop, well, we can turn it into alcohol, So distilling is there to provide, to give everything a last chance, and really reuse what you've got on hand. And that is true sustainability, I think.
listening to you say that, and I'm thinking about what I know of the early days of Scottish distilling, and then certainly when you head over to America and what they had on hand in the early days. Yes, it was a case of, all right, how can we give something an extra life? How can we make this
they wouldn't
last?
have usually been growing their corn barley field for whiskey. It would have been primarily for food or whatnot, and then if it was left over or was bad or whatnot, then they would have used it for distilling. And of course nowadays we do it just for this, but that's the essence of it is there, you know what I mean? So I think that's where the whey comes in. I think it's quite cool that we can use that leftover alcohol for something like this. So.
I think another, if you've ever done a distillery tour, and they're great fun, but they talk about the mashing process, so that where you get all of your grains and you ferment those, and then the liquid goes off, and then you're left with all of these spent grains. Now, if you've done a distillery tour in Scotland, what they will then tell you usually is that they then take those spent grains and they give them to the local farmer, and that goes into usually feed for the cattle, and they'll follow up always with the line, "Happy cows." There's no alcohol in those. It's
and
not
you have
doing
to
anything.
laugh.
But you have to laugh, and because it's the same joke that they use at every distillery.
Yeah.
But yes, that's a point that in most cases, especially within New Zealand as well, you've done your mashing. That liquid then goes off to eventually go through the still, but you've got all of these grains that have been fermenting over, and they can go either be composted or biodegrade, or go off to become animal feed for your local farmer.
And there's lots of distilleries doing that. I have a local farmer. I just send him a text when I know I'm doing a mash. I say, I'll leave it out front for you, and he comes and picks it up, and he gives it to his chickens and pigs, and he said they love it. They love it.
Happy chickens.
Happy chickens. And if it's not him, I've got friends in the Waimak with cows. They're happy to take it too. The cows froth over it. Happy cows.
Happy cows. Not that you could do a blood alcohol reading on a cow after having eaten them. I mean, no, it's not going to move the needle. It's not. No. But it's... You got to say it.
You got to say it.
Now, how about you pour us a little bit of the Cardrona, and then while you do that, I'm going to read this next part because I want to get it right. Oh, lovely. Water. You cannot make good spirits, you cannot make good whiskey without good water. And an incredible amount of water is used in the distillation process, whether you are mashing your grains, whether you're adding it to run through the still, you're trying to cool down your still. There is just so much water. And Cardrona, I guess, was able to build a whole lot into, because they were a purpose-built distillery and they got a lot of investment. It meant that they were able to build some of those sustainability features in at the ground level, because they had that in mind as they were designing the place. So they are recycling all of that water. They use water to cool the wort during the mashing process. That's then directed back into the hot liquor tanks to become the second and third waters. So basically, as the water is heated up, as it's trying to cool other things down, that water is then sent back and recycled into the process. That warm water is then used to heat up the visitor centre before being cooled and returned back to the Cardrona River. I mean, I'm sure you'd love to get a central heating system in here with the water that you're using, but it's smart thinking and innovations that thinking that, okay, if we've got to take the water from the river, one, we want to be able to return as much of that water to the river as possible. You can't just run hot water back into the river. That's not good for it. But if you can recycle that hot water in as many ways as possible, getting as much energy efficiency out of it as you can.
Yeah, especially when you're out, as remote as they are in the middle of the valley that.
I've been there, and it can get really, really hot.
Oh.
Well, and it can also get really, really cold.
Yeah.
So
they're borrowing the water, if you will, from the river, aren't
they? Yeah. What ones that seeing as we're toasting Cardrona and their water recycling?
Yeah, so this is their full flight. So this is a recent release from them. This is sherry and bourbon cask.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got it at cask strength. This is 62.8%, so I might have given us a bit of a heavy pour here. So we can enjoy that responsibly, if you will. But this is, I think the full flight is the coming of age one, isn't it? They're sort of saying it's this is what we expect of it from now on, sort of thing, isn't it? And Cardrona has beautiful body and depth. You know, they do use fantastic barley, fantastic barrels. They've got a beautiful climate for it, beautiful stills. Everything about the whole operation is something out of, you know, your imagination. It's fantastically beautiful, but the whiskey no different, isn't it?
I mean, there's a bit of a prickle there, but to be expected.
At 62%.
Indeed, indeed. But there's still some lovely aromatic, picking up some of those vanillas, some of those red fruits.
Yeah, to me this screams more American oak or bourbon than it does the sherry.
Yes.
Yeah, but big full vanilla and caramel for me, especially. But I don't think I've really ever had a Cardrona whiskey I don't enjoy. So, give it a try. Now, I'm just thinking while you were talking about all this, about there are many unsustainable things that many distilleries are doing as well. And it's unfortunately just maybe a point, maybe more for New Zealand being so far away from the world. Because, and maybe we'll get to it a bit more, but certainly one thing I was thinking of is just the shipping costs of getting stuff down here. The shipping impacts of getting stuff down here is probably the biggest one. Because we can't produce everything in New Zealand. That's one of the biggest ones. And then stuff like these little plastic seals, they're quite unsustainable, if you will, especially now that we know what we know about plastics, and they're on most spirits really nowadays, aren't they? So,
and I mean, okay, even I know that there are some distilleries that are foregoing packaging, bottle sleeves. I mean, in most cases it's a cardboard tube, but you're still, even if you can then recycle it, you're still producing that cardboard tube. And don't get me wrong, I love having a good display, and equally if we can talk about some of the, and I'm singling out Pōkeno here, which isn't fair. It's not fair at all. Their limited edition series,
I did put it up there if you want.
Have got some of the most beautiful artwork.
Yeah, it is.
It's truly stunning.
Yeah.
But like any kind of packaging, what do you do with it once you finish the bottle? And yeah, are these questions that we then need to be asking about? Okay, do we really need decorative sleeves? As awesome as they are and as beautiful as they are, what's the trade-off?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it is. It is a expensive process as far as money and materials go. So, and it is really just waste, isn't it? It's really not providing anything for your whiskey.
And I mean, that's tough. It's tough.
Because and it is beautiful, and they have done it. It is a piece of art like that one, for example. Maybe something like this is maybe justifiable,
But I mean, that's kind of because clearly they've commissioned an artist and they've got it printed.
Yeah.
And I don't. Now, this was the first Tortora cask release. I don't know how much of this, if any of it, made it overseas, and maybe that's for future releases. But because Pōkeno really is flying the flag for New Zealand in the world whiskey market at the moment, something like this really does tell the New Zealand story, sell that imagery. But, and I guess that's my question is, okay, you consume the whiskey, and it's done its job. What do you then do with this?
Yeah, you almost need a way to like frame it.
Oh,
that one's so nice. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Cut it and just open it up and put it in a frame. But yeah, no, I think that might be justifiable. I think something like that, very special, very unique. I think that's all right. But if you're just putting it in a plain cardboard box, with just your name on it, or even if it's just a copy of the label on a box, do I need that really? And how many Scotch whiskies do we get, with those? Like many. And it's just exactly what it says on the bottle. Yeah,
it's not providing anything new. It's not adding anything new, and you take it out of the cardboard sleeve, and that goes hopefully straight into the recycling.
Yeah.
Is it needed?
Is it needed? Yeah. Now, I see you had mentioned about Black Collar as well with their water. Tell me what you know about that, because I don't know about that.
Well, again, I'm spending a lot of time going through lots of different distillery websites, and Black Collar, who we talked about in our rum episode up in Kerikeri, they also, maybe it's worth going onto their website. They've developed a closed-loop cooling system for their stills that has completely reduced their amount of wastewater.
Right.
So I think maybe we would love to have them on, and that's something that they can talk about a bit more in depth. But yeah, if you are just using water for cooling, if you're not drawing off from your water source every time, and if you can recycle that so that you're able to use it multiple times for cooling down in the process, great. It's all of these little things that if you can make these changes to reduce your water consumption,
makes a big difference. Yeah, we are a rich country with water, but we go through droughts quite often, don't we? So it's important to look into that. While we were talking about packaging as well, we were maybe we'll lean towards what some of the alternative packaging options are out there right now, or maybe we should talk about the glass first. Let's start with what is.
Start with what we have.
Yeah. And this is where one of the biggest unsustainable features is in New Zealand spirits, is that I would say 99% of New Zealand distillers have to buy their bottles from overseas. The closest spot really we can get them from is China, manufactured. Most people will get them from France or Italy or Germany as well. And they might come through a different country, but it's basically from one of those sort of four, maybe the USA. I get some of mine from the USA. But there are people in New Zealand that are working towards a more sustainable option. I've got Island Gin on the table. They're on the Great Barrier Island. And they thought when they were starting up that it just didn't seem right to put that sort of shipping waste into the world. So they worked with a bottle manufacturer in Auckland to use recycled glass to create a custom bottle just for them. And they've come up with this really cool rippled bottle that's distinctly theirs, and they say it varies from green to blue depending on what's being recycled at the time. And also Dancing Sands in Takaka is doing a similar thing with another company in New Zealand, and they've got some custom bottles made from recycled glass as well. So yeah, it's quite unsustainable the way it's going at the moment. To get bottles down here, it takes months and months, sometimes years of planning and shipping, and a huge amount of capital to get your bottles down here.
Because you're shipping by weight, and glass is not light.
It's definitely not light. Yeah.
My
first, if I can tell a quick story.
Go.
The first time I ordered a pallet of bottles for my whiskeys and gins, it was when I was still at the garage at home. And so it was months of effort. Okay, great, I've ordered them, they're coming. I was tracking the ships, on marine traffic on the apps and stuff like that. And finally, one day it showed up at my house. And I was so excited. So the guy backs up, huge tail lift truck, down my very small driveway, and it barely fit down the driveway. And luckily he didn't break off the mailbox like a couple other trucks did. But he finally got back, dropped the tail lift, he gets the pallet out. I thought, oh gosh, that looks heavy. He says about 700 or 800 pounds, I think, or something like that. And he pulls it off, and it gets stuck on my gravel driveway because I have a gravel driveway. I'm like, okay. So now there's a pallet, 800 pounds with 1,200 bottles just sitting in the middle of my driveway. I can't leave. My wife can't come home. I'm supposed to go to a dentist appointment in like 20 minutes as well. So I call the dentist. There's a pallet stuck in my driveway. I cannot get there. And they're like, oh, that's a new one? I was like, I promise you I'm not lying. I can send you a picture. And the truck just left me. Like he's like, okay.
No, he's got things to do.
That's your problem, man. I was like, okay. So I spent the next 6 hours probably, one by one, moving individual bottles from the pallet into the garage, because they don't come in boxes, these things, which is probably a good thing, but they come in layers. They're layered, the bottles, so I had to pick each one up 2 or 4 at a time and walk it in, and I had to do this for like 1,200 bottles, and it just gives you an idea of how annoying it is for a small distillery to deal with.
Yikes.
But that was my first experience with bottles coming into the country. It has nothing to do with sustainability, but
it makes a point.
You can just picture me, and the neighbors were coming out and thinking, like, what is this guy doing? Like, they could hear clinking and all sorts of glass, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm trying to keep this a little bit down low because, I don't need everyone in the neighborhood knowing I'm making spirits in my garage. So there you go. But that is a very big point of contention right now, is how can we get better, well, not better, but just closer glass and more sustainable glass down here.
See, now I'm in marketing and I understand the value of having a custom bottle, of getting something that's not just straight off the shelf, because you want people to buy your spirit, and it needs to, like it or not, when you're on that shelf, you are competing with everybody else on the shelf for somebody walking in. What am I spending my $100 on? And, you want something that either, if they are looking specifically for you, make it easy for them to find you, or if they've gone in and not knowing what they're about to buy, if you are looking bright and attractive and awesome, then you're going to entice them. So I understand the value in that, but that's where you get cool people like Waiheke, like Humdinger, that say, bring our bottles back and either we'll refill them or we'll reuse them, or, we will give those bottles a second life. I, at the last, 2023 Dramfest? Yeah. I purchased a couple of bottles of Waiheke whiskey. I'd finished them. Now, it's not convenient for me to go back and return my bottles to Waiheke Island. That
Probably
is
not. Yeah, it's not a weekend.
Some way away. But I knew that Mark and Ro and the team were coming to Christchurch for Dramfest. And so in my bag that I had a book that I wanted Dave Broom to sign, and I had some snacks and some bits and pieces to keep me going. And I also had 2 empty whiskey bottles. Now, you line up, you get in, but basically you have to wait for everybody to get in and for the pipe band to play before anybody can start serving you drinks. So it's an opportunity to go around, see what's on the tables, talk to people, do all of that fun stuff. I made a beeline for the Waiheke whiskey stand. I heard you guys recycle your bottles. Yep, that's right, Mark says. So I went into my bag and I pulled out 2 empties. That's then 2 empties that they had to then take back with them to Waiheke. So again, maybe not the most sustainable practice, but I still felt better that they didn't go into my recycling. Equally, I have had chats with other distillers where I have tried to return their bottles to them, and they've said, we don't have the facilities to clean them out properly, thanks, but they're just going into the recycling bin. And that to me kind of feels like a missed opportunity.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I mean, because you reuse your jars.
Yeah, the thing is, like, when you get a nice bottle, or in my case, a nice jar, you don't want to just throw them away, So when I'm at the farmer's market, and I tell people, I say, "Oh, are you local?" And they say, "Yeah." I say, "Oh, well, finish this one up, bring it back to me, and I'll give you a discount on the next full jar."
Right.
Because if I can pay them a little bit more than the jar is worth to reuse it again, so I don't have to order more of them, it's just better all around for everybody. And if they don't want to bring it back to me, I implore that they use it for something in the kitchen, or something like that. It's a great mason jar. So, I'd hate to see it just go into the recycling bin after one use,
I've got one of your jars in my fridge at the moment that has some homemade jam in it.
Lovely.
Yep.
I love that. That's what it should be about, yeah. See, it's not just a bottle. See, you can't put jam in a...
No, jam doesn't work so well in a bottle like that. But who do we have? I've mentioned you, Waiheke Cadrona, number 8. Number 8 down in Dunedin. They have a very distinctive triangle-shaped bottle.
Like a beaker, almost.
It does look like, yes. Yeah. And so Julian and the team down there, they are at the Dunedin Farmers Market on a Saturday morning. I always love to go and see them when I'm down, and they're another one that if you take it back, they'll reuse it, or they'll straight up refill it for you, or So what more needs to be done to kind of make this more of a common practice?
I think people just need to get more attached to their bottles, Well, the thing is, all the ones up here on the table, maybe minus this Broken Heart one, they're all unique bottles, I'd say, Mm-hmm. And Cardrona does want these back. They send you a return label to ship it back to them, actually.
Do they?
Yeah. So in the box that this comes with, they have a New Zealand Post, ready paid. You just slap it on with the empty bottle, ship it back to them. They're happy to take those back because they do have their logo on the bottom and stuff like that.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So they are custom made for them, and they would like them back, so that's cool. It's not necessarily sustainable to be shipping it twice across the country, but they would have invested heavily into those bottles. I mean, Waiheke, they've made the custom bottle on the bottom with the still.
geodesic design.
And they got, even their little established 2010, New Zealand Aotearoa, Waiheke Island Distillery even, they want that back, this is their bottle, really. So I think maybe it's not so much a matter of, how do we make it happen, but just if you're a distiller and you have bottles that are your own, just get them back. Don't let them go to waste, And I get it, if you were using a standard 700 ml, just normal bottle, I mean, they're a dime a dozen. At the end of the day, it's a little bit easier to just say, I could probably recycle that one. It doesn't cost much, But, should you, I don't know. But I'm just saying, it's easier for sure from a business perspective to say, I put a lot of time finding this jar. They cost money to get in, and they're unique. I'd rather have them back, reuse them, instead of see them just go in the trash or the recycling.
Once upon a time, when I lived in a student flat, it was the thing that you would put empty spirits bottles up on the windowsill, or you'd display them somewhere.
Yep.
Because there are plenty of bottles. Like the Lammermoor bottle is very distinctive, very custom made.
Yeah.
And it was a tasting. It was a tasting I run, and I had Lammermoor there, and I think that might have been the one up at Sign of the Takahe, and I had 41 people. And so I had to order 2 bottles of everything. I finished 1 bottle. There's a guy sitting there, and he said to me, "Can I have the empty? Can I?" And I'm like, "Mate, yeah, absolutely." And he told me that he had a photography project, that he was taking photos of bottles or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But I'm like, otherwise, it's a beautiful bottle.
Yeah.
But I don't have any use for it now that the whiskey is gone.
Yeah.
Who's solving that problem? Broken Heart.
Yeah. They've come up with a pretty cool solution. What do they call them? Eco pouches, which is quite cool. So it's a plastic bladder pouch, and it's branded with their stuff. And basically, you would order it, and it's a discounted price to the regular bottle price, and then they want you to refill your bottle once you get the pouch. And I think they can recycle those as well.
Yes, yeah, I'm pretty sure that that was the... It's no good creating a plastic pouch that's just going into the bin when you could have just recycled the bottle. No, so they've worked on these eco pouches so that they're biodegradable or recyclable. Need to look into that.
Yeah.
But yes, that's the plastic... cheaper to ship because they're lighter, fewer breakages, and... I guess they have foreseen, because Johnny Walker, for their Johnny Walker Black label, introduced a cardboard bottle.
Yeah, with the bladder inside, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And people were basically saying, I don't want to display a cardboard bottle in my cabinet.
Yeah.
And so clearly this is an objection that they're getting over by saying, no, okay, well, you're not displaying a cardboard bottle or a bladder. You've purchased from us before, you've got a beautiful bottle, great, so now you can just order this one in that's cheaper to ship, easier to kind of move around, and just pour that liquid in, and now again you're giving that bottle second life.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty cool idea. I wonder if we'll see it in anything else, other than gin. I think it'd be cool to see, should we get our whiskey refills that way? Would that be a acceptable solution?
Well, I think nobody's buying the pouch in the first instance, but if it was,
let's just say you have your bottle of Waiheke, you've finished it, and now you want some more. Then would you order a bladder to refill that bottle?
If I was able to get the same. I'd finished a bottle of Moss and I was able to get a bladder of Moss to refill it. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Yeah. At a discount, right?
I would. I think that has to be kind of the incentive is a little bit. Yeah, and recognition that you're not paying for the cost of the bottle again.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be a significant discount.
No.
But that's something for people to think about for sure. I think that's a pretty neat solution. I think another neat one is Roots Gin, Elemental Distillers up in Marlborough there. They're using something at bars, and it's like a box, I'm trying to think of the name.
You're not selling me on. I don't know what you're on.
It's a the word is totally escaping, but like an urn. Like a reusable urn, but like quite fancy, eco something or other. And that's what they're doing. They're taking it to the bars, and the bars basically get their eco bin, if you will. I can't remember the name. And then they refill their bottles with it there.
So like a keg, basically.
Yeah, a keg. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And now they're not the only ones doing it. I have seen Humdinger has set that up at their distillery, so you can come fill up your bottles again. And I think there's another one as well. I can't remember which one, but certainly people are doing this whole urn idea. You bring it in bulk, people can fill up their bottles. It doesn't need to be the same bottle. It could be any bottle, right? So it's a cool idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you've already got the bottle.
Yeah.
Why not reuse it?
Caps versus cork.
Yeah. Now, I know this will get contentious. I know this will.
Let's just hold on a second. I'm just going to pop this cork.
No. Now, see, I was already talking about caps versus cork on one of my social media pages, and I got sent in a very, let's just say, enterprising initiative by one of my followers who said, okay, if you've got your traditional cork, that one of the main egotistical reasons for keeping a cork is so you can go...
I'll be honest, that one's not good for that.
Oh, that's a glass one. Oh, it's a glass one. All right, well, let's go back here then. Okay. There we go.
Yeah.
So, and look, you can't store your whiskey bottle on its side because the alcohol will just eat the cork.
Yep.
The cork tree itself has got to be at least 4 years old before you can start harvesting from it. Mm-hmm. You can't reuse a natural cork in the same way. It's not really recyclable. then you get to your synthetic corks, and again, well, how sustainable are they? Mm-hmm. With this, if your pure reason for liking the cork is because of the noise it makes, I had somebody suggest that you get your thumb and you put it in, and you can do that.
It's just not the same. It's not the same. That's satisfying. Whereas I've put my finger in here to do it. Yeah, but where's the squeak?
Oh no! Yeah, but I mean that does it's nothing. It doesn't impact the flavour. I mean, look, you know as well as I the perils of opening up that cork and the cork snaps off, and you have to make the judgment call of do I push it in and then sieve the bits out, or do I use a corkscrew to see if I can pull it out all in one piece? And I mean, I started collecting some of my corks for that very reason. One, because I can fit a fair number of corks in an ice cream container. That is one way of me remembering some of the whiskies as opposed to displaying the entire bottle. But also the times when something has snapped and I've gone, it's okay, I've got a replacement cork that can go in. Yep. Now, Waiheke, they do have branded caps. Mm-hmm. So they've invested in that as well as in their bottles. The screw cap means that, well, the cork doesn't break. You've made that so that you can reuse it. If you wanted to, for whatever reason, store it on its side because you've got a wine rack that you'd like to convert into a whiskey rack, you can. Mm-hmm. The caps are recyclable. They're also reusable. And you don't have to worry about the cork disintegrating or breaking apart and tainting your whiskey. And man, there was one I had to get a tea strainer out for every pour that I wanted. And then the one time I forgot about it and I'm like, why is this gritty? It's
yeah. Now I wonder because only like a few weeks ago New Zealand changed the recycling rules,
right?
And one of those rules really was we can't have small bits. You can't have anything too small in the recycling now.
Right.
And this is just universal across the country. So I wonder, even though these were made to be recyclable, are they still recyclable, But they're reusable.
Whereas your cork here, that's not recyclable.
So if I send this back to Waiheke, will they reuse the cap?
Yeah, when I gave them the bottles back, I made sure that the caps stayed on. They're branded. They were made. They're not a cheap foil cap like you might get on some of your bargain basement blended whiskies that you would just crush up in your hand once you're finished. It's
certainly robust. Yeah, it's robust for sure. But I do see the argument for not using cork, but I have an argument for cork.
Okay,
right? And it's more about it's a natural product, right? It's bark. Mm-hmm. So if you take something like this Cardrona cap here, with natural cork on it, and wood on the top, and I throw that away, what impact does that really have on anything? Well, these will both degrade, I think, over time. What do you say?
Yeah, maybe that will take... how treated is the wood on the top? Do you have to separate the cork from the wood if you were going to put it in your compost? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that.
And I'm not. I'm just playing a bit of devil's
advocate.
Sure, yeah, for sure. But I think there's still something about this whole thing that makes me like the experience of drinking whiskey a bit more.
And that's what it's part of the experience. It doesn't. In some ways, if you don't have a proper tight seal, because maybe the cork's been eaten away, it can oxidate the whiskey, it can make it go bad a wee bit faster.
Yeah.
But as you said, you just like that squeaky sound and the pop noise that you...
So whereas some things you're going to have something that comes in a cardboard box, that's useless,
mm-hmm.
I think a cork, where I get some sort of actual dopamine hit, might actually be part of the experience, and I'm not even joking. I kind of think if it's something like this where it's natural cork, natural wood. There might be a little bit of toxic glue or something out there. I don't know. It's probably food grade, but I think that's actually a pretty sustainable choice compared to what I actually use, which is those fake corks, which is absolutely unsustainable, and I totally accept that. But I've had bad experience with the corks that I've been able to get from my bottles. So, yeah.
So why? Because here's one for you that I'll put you on the spot.
All right.
Your gin bottles have screw caps, but your whiskey ones are corks. Why? And those caps could be washed and reused. Why would you not then just roll the same bottle with the same screw cap out across both your gin?
I have an answer for you.
Oh.
And it is not elegant.
Okay.
And this is maybe a longer story. So back in September 2022, I was going to bottle up my first batch of Dusky whiskey, right? Mm-hmm. This was going into the bottles that we use today, and I had a brand new pallet sitting in the driveway. It's been sitting there for 2 months, sealed up, ready to go. The day comes, I poured out my whiskey, I'm ready to bottle it. I go and I'm like ready to clean some bottles. I open up the pallet, and what do I find but screw top bottles when I was supposed to be cork bottles? And I had an absolute fit. I was so upset because I was about to release my first ever whiskey, and I was not going to put them in screw top bottles. I don't know why. Maybe I should have, but I had it in my mind that I was using cork, right? So I called the company that had made the mistake, and I said, "You've delivered a wrong pallet to me," and that's obviously quite costly for them because now they've got to ship me a new pallet, and they do ship me a new pallet quite quickly. But now I have this pallet of screw tops in my driveway, and I thought, well, if I save all these other ones for whiskey, I'm going to use these screw top ones for gin. So it was more of a matter of I had them on hand, I'm going to use them for something else. Whereas I knew I wanted cork for whiskey, and I thought screw top for gin, that's fine. I don't need a cork pop for my gin, so screw top. And now I'm going to stick with screw tops with the gin because it works nicely. And but it wasn't at all a choice of sustainability, and I'll be totally honest about that.
But would you consider having a screw top for your whiskey?
If I could get a custom one done that I could reuse, yes.
Yeah, you could get the moose head. You could get the moose head on there, I'm sure.
But I would also have to have a custom bottle for it because the bottles I use are quite generic, as you know. I just don't feel like if you're going to buy a really unique New Zealand whiskey, which mine usually are unique as far as New Zealand whiskey goes.
Usually. Give yourself some more credit, but yeah.
Then I think, at least, I think a cork at least gives it the pop. Whereas if you just give it a basic screw top, like my gin ones are, which are just a solid color, I don't think it gives you any sort of experience, And neither one is sustainable. Neither one. The caps, the screw caps are plastic. The cork tops, they're fake cork. So they're both plastic garbage, So they're both bad options. And I did use cork on my first batches of bottles, but the cork on them was bad, and like you say, they did fall apart, and they did come out, and I did, have some tops break off and stuff like that. So there is problems with them. I totally respect that. But I think if you're paying for it, I think that has value to me. You know what I mean?
And you're not the only one.
And I'm not the only one.
No,
for
you're
sure.
not.
And I'm not going to not buy Waiheke because they have a screw top, because I like Waiheke whiskey, and I'll not try a whiskey because it has a screw top. But if I have a mediocre whiskey that is got this, I might buy that first, if I'm honest.
Wow.
Yeah, and that it is a hit in the brain of dopamine. It really is. So there you go. Yeah.
Right.
So that's where I stand. But I think it's all a bit of, the wine industry, they made this change quite a while back, the 90s or something like that.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it.
And so they don't have any corks for New Zealand wine. It's all screw tops.
Just trying to...
I think it's a law. Like,
oh, okay.
I think so anyway. Someone can correct me on that. But so they've gone with the screw tops because this was supposed to be more sustainable. But now I'm thinking again with these new recycling rules, is it? Like now you're just getting these tops and throwing them in the trash.
I mean, once upon a time, buying a bottle of wine with the cork in it was a mark of you've got a good bottle of wine there, versus the foil cap. And these days, yeah, you can buy very expensive, very classy bottles of wine with a cap, and that's no longer the mark of whether or not it's a good or bad.
Yeah.
And I think, the whiskey, there are some who are making that change and introducing caps, but until people, right now, because the only whiskey they are going to encounter that has a cap are your bargain basement blends.
Yeah.
And they see another whiskey with a cap, and consciously or unconsciously they're going to think, is that going to be...
And I think maybe the point here is that maybe the solution has not yet presented itself. Maybe cork or caps, maybe they're both wrong.
And there's an interesting...
Maybe there's a third option.
A third.
But I don't know what that could be, of course. But something sustainable that is satisfying and...
Yeah, because the glass ones aren't satisfying. And
at all.
No.
Yeah.
Because I've got a couple of...
and you can't put that in a recycling bin. It's got wood on the top.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah.
It's the distillery out of Wellington that makes the gin, and they've got the old 2-cent pieces. And,
yes, Imagination.
Yeah. They use glass. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you can't call it a cork.
Stoppers.
A glass stopper.
Yeah.
And while I appreciate that it's holding a tight seal, they can be damn difficult to get off.
Yeah, yeah.
You really, that one even...
Yeah, it feels like you're breaking it.
Feels like you've got the worst of both worlds.
I'll put it that way. So I think either it hasn't been invented, or we need to come up with a better way to recycle these things. So that's where I'm at on them.
All right.
Let's move on from that.
Final thought.
Yeah.
Final thought. Bottle buyback schemes.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of talked about this, but we've
talked about bottle returns. Mm-hmm. I've lived in Germany where they do this really well, and there are some states in Australia that do it, where basically when you buy your glass bottle of whatever it is, you pay a small deposit, I guess, 20, 30 cents, what have you, and then you get that money back when you take the bottle back to a recycling place.
Yeah.
And then I believe that those bottles are then actually taken back to...
Yeah, we had this in Canada too. Same, it was beer bottles especially, yeah. And so long as you were in a certain province, you had your beer bottles, you bring them back to the beer store, and you'd say, here's my 2.4 of Molson, and they'd give you a new 2.4 Molson, and they'd give you the discount, from bringing back the other bottles. So you'd always wait till you had a pile of them, and you'd bring them all back at once and hope you get a free case of beer or something. But no, they are an interesting idea, because at least we were bringing them back, We never recycled the bottle in our life. They always went back in the box to take back to the store. Is that an option? I don't know.
Yes, and really interesting side project. Scotland was looking at doing something similar, but ran into problems with what happens if somebody buys a bottle in England and then comes over the border and returns a bottle that hasn't had the deposit paid on it, and then that's money that's a complicated problem that they had to deal with that we don't hear. But Scotland roughly has a similar kind of population size to New Zealand if you're just looking at Scotland and not the rest of the UK. If they can look at something like a bottle buyback scheme, yeah, why can't we?
Yeah, no, we totally should be able to. I think it worked really well back in Canada, if I can use that, because a lot of them were, for beer specifically, because it was for beer, really. I don't think we did it for much else. But, you'd buy your beer bottle as brown, and it was standard. It had nothing on it, and they could probably really easily either recycle or reuse that, whereas if I'm going to go to do a bottle buyback here with some spirits, and I send in a jar of this and a bottle of Cardrona and a bottle of Waiheke, I mean, I don't know, like, do they really want to pay you to recycle it, break it down and turn it into something new,
That's a fair point, and that maybe a bottle buyback scheme
needs to be more universal.
It does. And maybe if you were looking at something like something on the scale of, say, a Glenfiddich,
yeah,
that yes, they have a unique custom bottle, but they are producing enough bottles at scale to make something like that a bit more worthwhile. Whereas here, yes, it could work for beer bottles, but maybe with
even then, like, one, because now so many craft beer brands use different bottles and stuff, But like, this is what I'm saying is I'm basically offering people $5 to bring my jars back. You're paying your $65 for a jar of original moonshine when you buy it. You come back to me, you get another one. You get $60 for that one. You get $5 off. It's essentially a buyback, and I think we really do have to do it, probably distillery by distillery. Just pay your customers, bring it back. This is your rewards program, really.
It's a loyalty program, and it's difficult to scale up.
Yeah,
like we've talked about with Cardrona, including a return shipping.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're working with a custom piece, maybe that is more rather than a state-sponsored.
It's better to start these things as individuals, and then eventually. New Zealand is so small. We always forget how small New Zealand really is. The industry is small here. There's not a lot of people here. We've got to start grassroots, and move it from there. I think it's too ambitious to look at it at a big picture thing. It's really got to start locally. Yeah.
Support local.
Support local.
We keep coming back. Support local.
Yeah.
This episode has been fascinating. We've had the Cardrona and the Moss that we haven't really talked about in any great detail, but
we did talk about it in an episode with Colin Maris back in September, I believe.
Episode 2?
Was it 2 or 3? Yeah.
2.
2 or 3.
Oh, yeah, you might have to fact check me on that one.
Yeah.
2 might have been Tasmanian, and then 3 was Colin.
And so Colin is the one of the brand ambassadors for Waiheke, but we were just talking to him in general. But we did taste that one with him. And Moss is their lightly peated single malt, if you want to know anyway. And it's a beautiful expression from there. I don't think it's available right now, is it? I think last time I checked it's not available, but
hopefully coming
I'm
back
sure
soon.
more will be coming, yeah.
Well, if we're going for a bit of whiskey news, it's probably not available here because Waiheke has just started exporting to Australia.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's pretty cool. So if you're in Australia, get yourself some.
I mean, quite how that bottle return scheme's going to work from Australia over to Waiheke. That's a logistical problem for another time.
We're not paid enough for that. No. Sorry, guys. No, but listen, thanks everyone for listening. I think this has been really fun. If you have any ideas on sustainability or what distilleries can do, we'll chat more about this.
If there's a cool initiative that you know of or that you've implemented and we haven't talked about you, please let us know. This was not the definitive list on all sustainable topics and all distilleries by a long shot.
No,
so
definitely.
if we've missed something, please let us know.
Yeah. And get in touch with us at Distil-Nation NZ on all socials. distilnationnz@gmail.com. Distil-Nation.nz is our website. And thanks for listening, everyone.
Cheers. Oh, that was rough.
That was terrible.